The moving truck groaned as it pulled up to the quiet suburban street of Willow Creek. The sound echoed between rows of neatly trimmed lawns and pastel-colored houses that all looked almost too perfect to be real. Curtains shifted. Windows opened slightly. Neighbors peered out, curious, cautious, and in some cases already judging. Out stepped a tall black man in his late 30s, his shoulders broad and his movements calm, deliberate. He wore a plain gray t-shirt and dark jeans, but there was something about him, something steady, collected. His name was Marcus Reed. Behind him came Lena, his wife, a soft-spoken woman with caramel skin and warm eyes, followed by their two kids, Maya, 9, and Jordan, 6. The children ran across the front yard laughing, chasing each other, unaware of the eyes watching them. Lena smiled as she looked around. "It's peaceful," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Feels like a good place to start over." Gave a quiet nod. "Peaceful's nice. Let's see how long it stays that way." The street behind a rose-covered fence Nancy Miller watched from her porch swing. She was in her 50s, always wore her blonde hair in a neat bob, and thought of herself as the unofficial neighborhood watch. Her husband, Tom, a retired cop, sat beside her, sipping his coffee. When he saw Marcus step out of the truck, his brows drew together slightly. "Didn't know the house was sold," Nancy said. "Wasn't," Tom muttered. "Realtor must have kept it quiet. Looks like new folks moved in." Nancy narrowed her eyes. "You'd think they'd tell the neighborhood association before renting to outsiders." Tom didn't answer, but the look on his face said plenty. The Reeds spent the day unpacking. Marcus did most of the heavy lifting, occasionally glancing at his phone. Lena decorated the living room with bright art and family photos, a wall of warmth against the cold stares they felt from outside. By evening, the sun melted behind the houses and porch lights flickered on up and down the street. Just as Marcus was locking up the truck, Nancy strolled over, clutching a tray of cookies that looked more like an excuse than a welcome. "Hello there," she said, her voice sweet but stiff. "I'm Nancy from across the street. Just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood." Lena smiled brightly. "That's so kind. I'm Lena and this is Marcus." Nancy's eyes flicked to Marcus, then back to Lena. "Well, isn't that lovely? Where are you folks from?" "Originally Virginia," Marcus said, his tone even. "Oh, that's nice," Nancy replied quickly. "We don't get many families like yours around here. It's a quiet community, you know. We all like to keep things nice and safe." Lena's smile faltered slightly. Marcus gave her a small look, the kind that said let it go. After Nancy left, Lena sighed. "You felt that, right?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah, just keep smiling. People like her show you who they are fast." That night, as the Reeds sat on their porch watching the kids chase fireflies, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, a text with a secure code. His expression shifted for just a moment. Then he pocketed the phone. Lena noticed. "Work again?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Just a check-in, nothing serious." What she didn't know, what no one in Willow Creek knew, was that Marcus wasn't just some quiet new neighbor. He was a covert operations officer with the CIA, on temporary leave after a long-term assignment overseas. The move to Willow Creek was supposed to be a break, a chance to let the kids have a normal life, to let Lena breathe again. But peace was something Marcus had learned didn't last long, not for people like him, not in places like this. The next few days brought more of the same, polite smiles, whispered conversations, and sidelong glances. When Marcus jogged in the morning, a few people pulled their dogs closer. When Lena took the kids to the park, other mothers gathered in small circles and spoke in low tones. It was subtle, but it was there. Then, one afternoon, as Marcus was mowing the lawn, a police cruiser slowed down in front of their house. The officer inside gave him a long look before driving off. Marcus turned off the mower and wiped sweat from his forehead. "They're checking us out," he muttered. That evening, Nancy called the neighborhood chat group. "Look," she said, "I'm not trying to start anything, but the new man across the street, something about him doesn't feel right. He's always on his phone, walking around at odd hours. Tom says he looks trained, you know, military or something." Few others chimed in about seeing strange boxes delivered, hearing car doors late at night, noticing Marcus watching the street from his porch. The rumors grew faster than reason. By the weekend, Nancy made up her mind. If the police don't check it out and something bad happens, it's on us. she told Tom. So Sunday night, when she saw Marcus carry a metal case from his trunk into the house, she picked up the phone and dialed 911. "There's a suspicious man in our neighborhood," she said, her voice trembling with feigned fear. "He's acting strange. I think he might have a weapon." Within minutes, 2 police cars were on their way. Inside, Marcus was tucking the case, which contained secure communication equipment, into a closet when he heard the sound of tires screeching. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. Lena froze. "Marcus, what's going on?" he exhaled slowly, already knowing. "Stay calm, keep the kids in their room." When he opened the front door, 3 officers stood with hands on their holsters. "Step outside, please," one of them said. "We got a report of suspicious activity," raised his hands calmly. "Suspicious activity. Neighbors said you might have a weapon." He took a step forward, voice steady but cold. "Then you're about to find out how wrong your neighbor is." The blue lights painted the walls of the quiet street, flashing against the perfect white fences and manicured lawns. Curtains flickered open again. Faces appeared behind them, every nosy neighbor watching from a safe distance, hungry for drama but pretending to be concerned. Marcus stood on the porch, hands slightly raised, every muscle in his body controlled, measured. The lead officer, a broad man with a shaved head and sharp jaw, stepped forward, flashlight raised. "Sir, I need you to keep your hands where I can see them," the officer barked. "I'm doing exactly that," Marcus replied, voice calm but firm. "My kids are inside. I don't want them scared." "Then cooperate," the officer said, glancing at the second patrol car that had just pulled up. "We got a call that you were handling something suspicious, possibly a firearm." "Didn't move." "A firearm in my own house." He let out a small, dry laugh. "Did the caller say that before or after they mentioned what color I was?" The officer's jaw tightened. "This isn't about race, sir. We're just responding to a report." "Sure," Marcus said quietly. "That's usually how it starts, isn't it?" Inside the house, Lena clutched the curtain, watching in fear. The children were upstairs, whispering nervously. She wanted to scream at the officers to back off, but Marcus had told her to stay put, and she trusted his tone, that quiet, commanding calm she'd seen before when things got dangerous. The other officer, younger and clearly nervous, stepped closer. "Sir, what was in that case you carried in earlier?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Work equipment." "Mind telling us what kind of work?" He hesitated for a moment. He couldn't say too much. His cover wasn't supposed to break, not even now. But he could already feel this situation spiraling into something ugly. He reached slowly into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. "I'm going to reach for my ID, all right." The older cop nodded warily. Marcus handed over a plain black card, the kind that didn't look like much, until you noticed the embedded seal and the letters embossed faintly across the bottom. "Central Intelligence Agency." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You're kidding." "No, I'm not," Marcus said evenly. "Marcus Reed, I'm on temporary leave. That case you're asking about contains encrypted communication gear, not weapons. You can call Langley if you want to confirm, but I'd suggest you do it off the street." The second officer glanced nervously at the card. Captain, this looks real." The older man cut him off, trying to hide his discomfort. "How do we know this isn't fake? People make good forgeries." Smiled slightly, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "If I were faking a CIA credential, you'd already have half your department on this lawn and a few black SUVs behind you. Do you really think I'd risk that for suburbia?" The officer hesitated, then finally lowered his flashlight. "All right." "All right, just doing our job, sir." "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "And I'm just trying to live in peace with my family. Maybe next time check your sources before you come pointing flashlights at my house in front of my kids." He took back his card, gave them one last look, and stepped inside, shutting the door slowly. Outside, the officers exchanged uncertain glances. A few moments later, they got into their cars and drove off. Across the street, Nancy and Tom stood on their porch, pretending they hadn't been watching the whole time. Tom's face was pale. Nancy's voice shook a little. "Did you hear that, Tom?" he said. "CIA. Do you think that's true?" Tom didn't answer right away. "Could be. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't have called," bit her lip. "Well, how were we supposed to know? He was acting so strange." But deep down, even she felt the sting of guilt, the kind that comes when you realize you might have made a terrible mistake. Inside, Lena wrapped her arms around Marcus's chest as soon as the door clicked shut. "They could have shot you," she whispered. "They came here ready for something." "I know," Marcus said softly, kissing her forehead. "But they didn't, that's what matters." "Marcus," she said, looking up at him, "why didn't you tell them who you really are right away?" "Because that's not how this works," he said quietly. "You never reveal more than you need to, not unless you have to." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at his phone. He opened a secure app and typed a brief report: local incident. Exposure risk low. Neighborhood tension high. He closed it, leaned back, and exhaled slowly. He'd faced enemies overseas, men with guns, explosives, and no conscience, but somehow, the quiet malice of a suburban street felt more dangerous in its own way. It was polite, smiling, and whispered through half-open blinds. The next morning, the street was silent. A few people waved awkwardly when Lena took the kids to school, but most just avoided eye contact. The news had spread: the black family across the street wasn't just any family. The husband was government. Rumors twisted fast. Some said he was a spy, others said an assassin. By evening, a black SUV really did appear on the street, tinted windows, idling for a few minutes before leaving. That was enough to send the neighborhood chat group into overdrive. Nancy posted, "We didn't mean harm, but now I'm worried. What if we brought danger to Willow Creek?" Tom told her to stop. But it was too late. Fear has a way of growing faster than truth. That night, while Marcus sat on the porch sipping coffee, a different kind of silence settled, the kind before a storm. He saw the way people now crossed the street to avoid him. He saw the fear behind their smiles. And for the first time, he wondered if peace was really possible for someone like him. He didn't know that things were about to get worse, much worse, because the next day someone would break into his car, and they wouldn't like what they found inside. The morning began with a strange stillness. Even the birds seemed quieter, as if the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Marcus was the first to step outside, coffee mug in hand, eyes scanning the quiet street out of habit. Old instincts, the kind that never fade, no matter how much you try to live a normal life. Then he saw it. The driver's side window of his SUV was shattered, glass sprinkled across the driveway like bits of ice. His jaw tightened as he set the mug down on the porch railing. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Lena came out a moment later, robe wrapped tight around her. "What happened?" "Someone broke into the car," Marcus said flatly. "Last night." "Oh my God, Marcus," she whispered. "Do you think it's those neighbors again?" "Maybe. Or maybe someone else got curious." Crouched beside the vehicle, inspecting the lock and the door frame. Nothing looked random about it. Whoever did this wasn't just some bored teenager looking for cash or a radio. The brake was clean, professional. Inside the glove compartment, things were shuffled: his insurance papers, the small tactical flashlight he kept for emergencies. But what made his stomach drop was what wasn't there: the case. The small black case he had placed under the driver's seat 2 nights ago. It contained encrypted communication drives, ones linked directly to the agency's secure system. Nothing personally identifying, but sensitive enough to trigger alarms if accessed. He straightened, heart steady but mind racing. "They took something," he said quietly. Lena's eyes widened. "What do you mean, something? What did they take?" "Something I shouldn't have left in the car," he said. "That's on me." Before she could say another word, Marcus was already dialing a number, one that didn't exist in any phone book. It rang once before a robotic voice answered. "Field security line. Code verification required." Marcus spoke the code softly. "Read. Incident breach. Level minor, potential exposure." "Copy," the voice replied. "Containment protocol. Working on it." He hung up and looked at Lena. "Don't tell the kids anything, just keep them home from school today." She grabbed his arm. "Marcus, what's going on? Is this about your work?" He met her eyes. "I think someone from here or close by took something they shouldn't have. I'll handle it." Across the street, Nancy was watering her flowers, pretending not to notice the broken car. But she couldn't help glancing up every few seconds, her curiosity burning. Tom stepped onto the porch. "Stare," he warned. Nancy frowned. I can't believe this is happening. I didn't mean to start all this, Tom. Now there's break-ins and—" "Yeah," Tom interrupted. Well, maybe if you hadn't called the cops on the guy, people wouldn't be whispering. She looked away, guilt washing over her again. Meanwhile, Marcus decided to do something he hadn't done in months, something he promised himself he wouldn't need to do again. He opened a hidden compartment in the hallway closet and pulled out a small black pouch. Inside was a compact Glock 19, fully licensed but registered under a different name, one that tied back to his agency identity. He checked it, loaded it, and tucked it into the small of his back. By afternoon, he was walking down the street casually, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything unusual the night before. Most gave nervous, polite answers. A few shut the door halfway through the question. Then came the house 2 doors down, Derek Harper's place. Derek was in his late 20s, pale, with tattoos crawling up his neck and a permanent smirk that made people uneasy. He'd always kept to himself, except for the loud parties that sometimes filled the street with bass-heavy music. Marcus knocked once. Derek opened the door halfway, eyes darting quickly to the Glock's faint outline under Marcus's shirt. "Hey, you're the new guy, right?" "Yeah," Marcus said evenly. "Somebody broke into my car last night. You hear anything?" Derek shrugged. "Nope, maybe some kids, you know how it is." Marcus didn't blink. "Yeah, maybe. Thing is, the break was clean. No noise, no alarm, not the kind of thing kids do." Derek's smile twitched. "Well, that's not my problem, man. Maybe you should get a camera or something." Marcus took a small step forward, eyes fixed on Derek's face. "I'll do that. But if whoever broke in tried to sell what they took, they're going to have a much bigger problem." He turned and walked away, leaving Derek frozen in the doorway. That night around 10 p.m., Marcus sat in the dark living room, watching through the blinds. He wasn't waiting for the police this time. He was waiting for movement, any sign of who had the case. Then he saw it, a shadow near his SUV. Someone crouched beside it, flashlight faint and quick. Marcus moved silently, gun drawn, stepping out through the side door. His footsteps made no sound on the grass. The figure stood up suddenly, startled, and Marcus lunged forward, grabbing the wrist and twisting it behind their back. A young man cried out, "Wait, wait, please don't shoot." Marcus pinned him against the hood. "Who are you?" I'm Derek's cousin. He said you were some kind of agent." "I didn't mean to. He told me to check your car again. He said maybe there was money." Marcus pressed harder. "Where's the case?" "In his garage," the kid gasped. "He opened it, but it started beeping, man. He freaked out and told me to bring it back." Marcus released him, eyes narrowing. "Go home, you didn't see me." The kid stumbled away into the dark, terrified. Marcus walked straight to Derek's house. The garage door was open just a crack. Inside, faint red light blinked from the black case sitting on a workbench. The encryption lock had been tampered with, and now it was in security lockdown. He stepped in quietly, lifted the case and sighed. "You shouldn't have touched this," he muttered. Then a voice came from behind him. "Hey, what the hell are you doing in my garage?" Derek stood at the doorway, holding a baseball bat. Marcus turned slowly, eyes calm, gun still lowered but ready. "You broke into my car, you stole government property, and now you've triggered a failsafe that's going to bring more attention than either of us want." Derek sneered. "You think you scare me, man. You're not the cops, you're just some." Before he could finish, 2 black SUVs screeched to a stop outside, doors slammed. Men in suits poured out, weapons drawn, voices shouting. "Federal agents, step away from the garage." Derek's face went pale. Marcus sighed softly, holding the case out. "Told you," he said. "You shouldn't have touched it." The street lit up in flashing blue and white beams, brighter and louder than anything Willow Creek had ever seen. Engines idled. Commands were shouted. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains again, some whispering, some recording on their phones. In the middle of it all stood Marcus, calm and silent, holding the black case like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Across from him, Derek froze in the glare of tactical flashlights, the bat slipping from his trembling hands. "Put your hands on your head." One of the agents barked. Marcus turned slightly, raising his voice just enough to be heard. "Stand down, Agent Carter, it's me." Was a long pause. Then one of the men, a clean-cut agent with sharp eyes, lowered his weapon slowly. "Reed," he said, "what the hell are you doing out here? We picked up a breach alert." Gestured toward Derek, who looked seconds away from fainting. "Local thief, thought my car had cash in it, ended up stealing something that wasn't meant for him." Carter sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You know protocol, man. You trigger an alert, Langley sends us to clean it up." "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "And now my neighbors are going to think the government raided my house," Carter smirked. "Well, technically they're not wrong." Behind them, Derek's voice cracked. "Wait, you're serious? You're CIA?" Marcus gave him a cold stare. "You broke into the wrong man's car, Derek. Be thankful this is as far as it goes." Motioned to his team. "We'll take him in. Local PD, already been told this is a federal matter. We'll scrub the report." The agents cuffed Derek and loaded him into one of the SUVs. Nancy and Tom stood frozen on their porch, staring. She turned to her husband, her voice small and trembling. "Tom, I called the police on him. He's a federal agent. What if they'd shot him? What if the kids saw?" Tom put a hand on her shoulder, face pale. "You can't undo it, Nance, but you can stop pretending this was about safety. It was about fear." Her eyes filled with tears as she watched Marcus hand the case over to the agents, calm and controlled as ever. She didn't know whether to feel ashamed or afraid. Maybe both. The agents packed up, exchanged quick words with Marcus, and left almost as fast as they came. Within minutes, the street fell back into its eerie quiet, only now. It wasn't curiosity that lingered in the air. It was guilt. Heavy and unspoken, Marcus stood on his lawn looking up at the dark windows across the street. He could feel the stares. He didn't need to see them. When he walked inside, Lena was waiting near the door, arms crossed, face pale but steady. "They came again," she said softly. "Federal this time." "Yeah," he murmured, locking the door. "It's handled," she exhaled slowly. "Handled?" Marcus, the whole neighborhood saw. "What are we supposed to say now? That my husband's just another quiet dad who happens to have a government strike team on speed dial?" He looked at her, really looked. The exhaustion in her eyes, the worry in her trembling hands. He knew what she was thinking. "We'll never have peace here. I'll talk to them tomorrow," he said after a long silence. "Set the record straight." Lena shook her head. "You can't fix this with a conversation, Marcus. You know how these people think. They already made up their minds the day we moved in." Didn't answer. He just wrapped an arm around her and held her until her breathing slowed. The next morning, Marcus walked out as usual in his jogging clothes, just like before. But this time the neighborhood didn't look the same. People waved nervously, pretending everything was normal. Nancy was sweeping her driveway, eyes darting up every few seconds, hopping for some kind of acknowledgement. Finally, Marcus walked over. She froze, broom halfway in the air. "Mr. Reed, Marcus," he said quietly. "Just Marcus," she nodded shakily. "Marcus, I owe you and your family an apology. I didn't know. I thought." He stopped her gently. "You thought something because that's what you've been taught to think when someone like me moves next door. You called the cops because you were scared, not because I did anything wrong." Nancy's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean for it to go that far, I swear." "I know," Marcus said softly. "But meaning doesn't undo the damage. My kids saw those lights. My wife spent the night crying, wondering if I'd end up another headline. You didn't just call the police, Nancy. You put my family's safety in danger." She covered her mouth, ashamed, whispering, "I'm so sorry," nodded slowly. "Just remember that next time you feel afraid of someone who hasn't done a thing to you. Fear doesn't make you safe, it just makes you cruel." Turned and walked back to his house, leaving her speechless on the driveway. That night after dinner, he sat with Lena on the porch while the kids chased fireflies again, like they had the first night they moved in. But this time, something felt different. "Do you think we should move?" she asked quietly. He stared out at the street where the lights glowed soft and golden. "No, if we leave they win, and I'm tired of running." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Then we stay," smiled faintly. "Yeah, we stay." The street. Nancy sat in her dark living room watching the Reed kids laugh under the porch light. Guilt gnawed at her. She'd spent her life believing she was a good person, a fair person. But that week had shown her a truth she didn't want to face. Sometimes being nice wasn't enough. Sometimes silence and fear were just another kind of violence. The days passed, and the whispers died down. The Reeds kept living, laughing and loving, not because the neighborhood changed, but because they refused to be broken by it. And Marcus Reed, the man who had survived wars, espionage, and betrayals, found that his greatest challenge wasn't in a foreign country or a secret mission. It was right here, in a quiet street with white fences and smiling faces that hid their prejudice behind polite hellos. He had wanted peace, but what he found was something stronger, the courage to stay, to stand, and to be seen for who he truly was. And for the first time since he'd moved to Willow Creek, that was enough.